YouTube, the latest target of the music industry's battle over royalties and control, has taken steps to mend relationships with artists. It's reached a $40 million settlement with the National Music Publishers Association over unpaid songwriting fees. Mikaela Barwick explains.
Artists around the world have long been united in a public fight against online music giants such as Spotify. Now it's YouTube's turn. It's a constant battle for pop stars like Taylor Swift, who accuses websites of paying too little in royalties and not doing enough to prevent music infringement.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
But YouTube's held out an olive branch. According to the New York Times, the website's reached a $40 million settlement with the National Music Publishers Association. That's a third-party company representing music publishers. The agreement will give participating songwriting management companies access to a list of songs that YouTube has missing or incomplete rights data. YouTube will then pay them any accrued royalties. Annual sales statistics reveal that YouTube produces less direct income for musicians than the niche market of vinyl record sales. That's despite its huge audience. Artist manager Irving Azoff has publicly criticized the website in an open letter. He said, "You have built a business that works really well for you and for Google, but it doesn't work well for artists. If you think it is just the labels and publishers who are complaining, you are wrong. The music community is traditionally a very fractured one, but on this, we are united." Some artists like Katy Perry and Pharrell Williams have signed letters asking for changes to copyright laws. It's unclear which particular artists or songwriters will benefit from this agreement, or if there's any satisfaction from the music industry. But in a world of declining record sales and increasing artist pressure for fairer song fees, some might say that this settlement is just a fast and cheap way out for YouTube. I'm dying to see how this one ends. Mikaela Barwick, TRT World.
I can make the bad guys good for a weekend.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Estelle Derclaye. She's a professor of intellectual property law at the University of Nottingham in the UK. Professor Derclaye, thanks for joining us on TRT World. Now, the $40 million settlement, do you think that's going to be enough to satisfy the artists who are due all these unpaid royalties?
No, I don't think so. I think the problem is that the copyright holders and the artists, the musicians are in a power struggle with Google, who's a giant and is probably in a monopoly in most of in the world, and they have trouble to negotiate with Google a fair remuneration, and that's probably not going to be enough, and that's not the end of the story, I would say. The thing is that the European Commission in Europe is trying to address this problem, which is called the value gap in a new directive proposal. So there are similar arrangements. It's not only in the US that Google has these arrangements with companies and collecting societies representing musicians, but they also have an issue because Google has a monopoly, and it's difficult for artists to negotiate with Google and have a fair remuneration. So the law hopefully will catch up soon.
And you say a fair remuneration, but in this digital age of digital downloads and music being shared online, how are artists meant to get the royalties that they do deserve? It's not like the 50s, the 60s where you go and bought a vinyl. This is where music is shared between people. How are they meant to get that money?
Well, one way that they can do it, obviously, is through radio stations, and they get money through radio stations. Also, clips that people view are on TV. But nowadays, the main way of consuming music is either going to a concert where you pay a price, or you're watching it on YouTube, or you're downloading IP3 tracks from basically iTunes or other companies, or you have a video streaming like Spotify. But the problem is that these companies have quite a lot of power, and it's difficult to negotiate a fair price with them because the law does not allow this negotiation to be conducted under fair terms, because it's a murky area basically, and therefore this is why they want a change in the law in the US, but also they want a change in the law in the EU.
Well, you mentioned the US and the EU. Obviously, the US have got this deal that's been announced today. The EU, as you said, are working on it. What about artists in other jurisdictions, places like India, Pakistan? How are they meant to recoup the money that they're owed?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And probably there the law already is in compliant with international agreements, but I'm sure that the law is rather murky as well in those countries on this specific aspect, because the technology is moving faster than the law, and the law has to catch up. And probably there are also collecting societies in India and Pakistan and other countries which are trying to have deals with Google or platforms like in China, Baidu, etc., to have similar money collected out of advertising revenues that these websites utilize. But I'm sure they're in a similar situation than in the US and the EU, and it's difficult for artists and musicians in particular to recuperate a fair amount of the royalties that they should have.
Okay, it will be a developing story. Professor Estelle Derclaye from the University of Nottingham, thanks for joining us.